We're used to being wary of the spread of flu during this time of year. I saw an article this past week where our state epidemiologist, Dr. Tom Safranek, noted that this year's influenza season has been pretty severe in the United States, maybe the worst in 10 years. Fortunately, there's ways we can try to prevent its spread, and flu is curable. In biblical times, the worst disease to contract was leprosy. Leprosy was a terrible flesh disease from which, at the time, there was no cure. Its contagious nature and the physical deformities that it would cause to the body had people alienated from the community. As we heard in the first reading, someone with leprosy was required to live apart, and if anybody would get close to them, they'd have to call out and let them know that they were unclean. And eventually, they would die from it. As bad as physical illness, especially incurable ones, can be, these sicknesses can only hurt our bodies. But there is a worse disease that can destroy the whole person, body and soul. It's a terrible disease, the leprosy of sin. And unfortunately, we have all contracted it. And left untreated, it will lead us to spiritual death. We're all afflicted with this leprosy of sin. Maybe we've allowed certain sinful choices, habits to become a part of our life. Sometimes we can become so used to certain thoughts, certain words, actions, or inactions, bad habits that we've kind of convinced ourselves are not that bad, but in actuality are indeed sin. Other times we might know that something's a sin, but we don't know how to overcome it. Perhaps we've tried, but nothing seems to get any better, and we can end up frustrated. What we're realizing is the same thing that the ones with leprosy in the Old Testament knew, is that we can't heal ourselves. Lent's about to begin this week with Ash Wednesday. As we hear each year on Ash Wednesday, Jesus is going to prescribe 3 things to make us more spiritually healthy: prayer, fasting, and almsgiving. And last year during Lent, I focused pretty much on prayer, reflecting what that is all about. This year, I think we'll consider the second one, fasting. And not only fasting from food, but really, what does our fasting, what does our abstaining from meat really point us toward? Which is fasting from sin. Ultimately, we want to permanently fast, remove from our lives that leprosy that keeps us from God. To get rid of what prevents us from experiencing the fullness of happiness, the greatest joy that Jesus wants to give to us. One of the Sundays during Lent, we will have proclaimed to us the 10 Commandments. And each of those commandments is a summary of a whole category of actions that point us out the path, how we can live that will guide us to God and the greatest happiness. So during each Sunday this season, we're going to use 1 or 2 of the commandments to reflect on our life. What version or strain of leprosy do we personally struggle with? Knowing and being able to admit the condition that we're in will allow Jesus then to come in and heal it. So, for example, we can look at the first commandment. I am the Lord your God. You shall not have strange gods before me. So we can ask ourselves, have I really loved God above all things? Or have I put other things? Work, money, television, computer, my phone, pleasure, maybe even other people before God? Have I made time for God in prayer each day? And not just a passing moment, but actually pausing and spending time with him? Have I endangered my faith in God by what I expose myself to? Maybe things I read or programs I see that are ultimately opposed to faith and morals. Have I engaged in practices that are superstitious? Am I wholehearted in accepting and following God's teaching, or do I tend to pick those things that are easy or convenient? Have I denied the faith before others, maybe even just simply by being silent? Am I willing to defend and practice the faith in public? Have I chosen to sin, presuming on God's mercy afterwards? Or, in the opposite way, have I despaired that God could possibly forgive what I've done? Have I been lukewarm or indifferent or sad about spiritual things? Have I been ungrateful or failed to thank God for what he has done for me? These are all different ways in which we can fail to live that first commandment, be filled with that leprosy. But instead, Jesus calls us to trust in him and to bear witness to him through this commandment. To have confidence that the Father wishes to assist us in all things so that we can reach heaven. To love God above everything and to love others for him and because of him. To offer praise, adoration, and worship to God alone. The leprosy of our sin points out how much we need our divine physician, Jesus Christ. In the gospel, the man with leprosy, well aware that he cannot heal himself, with confidence he comes to Jesus. If you wish, you can make me clean. Do we have that kind of confidence in God? Do we believe that Jesus has come to heal us, not only to forgive our sins, but to transform us so that we need not sin any longer? This Lent, are we ready to place our lives even more in his hands, so that he may say to us, I do will it, be made clean?